Chapter 1. The Perfect Picture. The late afternoon sun filtered through rows of lush green vines, casting a golden haze across the vineyard. The scent of crushed grapes, wildflowers, and fresh earth lingered in the warm air. A soft breeze carried laughter from the far end of the field, where a photographer adjusted his lens and waved his arms to catch everyone's attention. Russell Harmon stood a few paces away, hands in his pockets, watching his wife Vanessa pose effortlessly in front of the camera. She was radiant, at least on the surface. Her long brunette hair shimmered under the sun. Her sleeveless cream blouse hugged her figure just right, and the high heels she insisted on wearing despite the uneven terrain gave her the elegant poise of a catalog model. She tossed her head back and laughed at something the photographer said. Heather, their 17-year-old daughter, stood off to the side, thumbs flying across her phone screen, occasionally sighing in the dramatic, theatrical way only teenagers could. She wore a maroon sundress Russell had bought her the week before, but she hadn't acknowledged the gesture. She hadn't even said thank you. She hadn't said much of anything to him lately. Russell smiled softly to himself despite the tension. Every year, they did this, an annual family photo shoot at the vineyard where he and Vanessa had once honeymooned. It had become tradition. He booked the best photographer, arranged catering, even paid for the private space rental so they could have uninterrupted shots. He didn't mind footing the bill. He never did. For Russell, traditions were anchors, proof that love, in its quiet way, endured. He adjusted the cuffs of his tailored shirt, smoothed his salt and pepper hair with one hand, and stepped closer to the group, prepared to join the next set of photos. Then his phone vibrated in his pocket. Curious, he slid it out and glanced at the notification. It was from Heather. "You're such a loser. Mom should have left you years ago for someone good." Russell's breath caught. He read the message again, slower this time, hoping he had misunderstood. But no, the words were clear, sharp, meant. A hollow sensation bloomed in his chest, a strange mix of nausea, disbelief, and something else, something darker, something ancient. A burn that began behind the ribs and pulsed out toward his limbs. He looked up. Heather was still texting, not even glancing in his direction. Vanessa had shifted into a different pose, hand on her hip now, lips curled into that fake, plastic smile she used at galas and fundraisers. For a brief second, Russell thought it might be a joke, a cruel one, maybe an attempt at teenage sarcasm. But deep down he knew. This wasn't new. This had been building. Quietly, he walked over to Vanessa between shots. "Can I talk to you for a sec?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, more to maintain his composure than privacy. Vanessa barely turned her head. "Make it fast. Lighting's perfect right now." He held up his phone, the screen angled toward her. She blinked, read it, and then she laughed. Not a polite chuckle, not a confused laugh, a full, amused laugh. And then, before he could process that, she reached over and high-fived Heather. "God, she's right," Vanessa said, smirking. "I settled for less." The vineyard fell silent. The photographer adjusted his camera in the distance, unaware. A bird chirped nearby, oblivious. Russell stood there, still holding the phone in midair, blinking slowly as his brain tried to catch up to what had just happened. She wasn't shocked. She wasn't even hiding it. Heather finally looked up from her phone, glanced at him with disdain, then went right back to texting as if he were invisible. A long silence settled over the moment like a weighted blanket. Vanessa turned her back to him and resumed laughing with the photographer, her arm around Heather's shoulder now as though nothing had happened. A little family moment, minus the man who had paid for everything. Russell didn't speak. He didn't shout. He didn't accuse. Instead, he looked down at his hands, these calloused hands that had built a company from scratch, that had held Vanessa through 3 miscarriages, that had signed Heather's first school application with pride. These hands had carried every burden asked of them and more. He reached into his pocket. The house keys, heavy, cold, and familiar, jingled softly as he pulled them out. He looked at them for a beat longer, thumb brushing the worn edges. His jaw clenched as he walked over to the nearest wine barrel. No dramatic speech. No anger. Just action. He set the keys down with a soft clink. Vanessa, hearing it, turned over her shoulder. "What the hell are you doing?" Russell stared at her with calm eyes. His voice, when it came, was quiet but crystalline with finality. "Why, I should have done a long time ago." Then, without a backward glance, he turned and walked down the dirt path that led to the parking lot. He passed vines heavy with grapes, the smell of lavender in the breeze, the very vineyard where they had toasted their vows 23 years ago. He didn't look back. Behind him, Vanessa scoffed loudly. "Go ahead," she called. "Walk away like you always do." Heather rolled her eyes, thumbs still dancing over her phone screen, not even looking up. They thought he was bluffing. They didn't know this wasn't the beginning of a fight. It was the end of his patience. And Russell Harmon didn't bluff. Not anymore. Chapter 2. Silent Execution. The sound of keys jangling against the front door broke the silence inside the Harmon residence. The door creaked open, letting in the soft glow of the porch light behind Vanessa and Heather as they stepped into the foyer. Both were laughing, loudly, freely, as if nothing in the world had changed since that morning at the vineyard. Vanessa was still wearing her white linen blouse, though now the collar was slightly wrinkled, and her heels clacked sharply against the hardwood as she kicked them off without looking. Heather dropped her phone into her oversized tote bag and flopped down onto the sofa, giggling at something she had seen on Instagram. "That photographer was hitting on you," Heather teased, pulling her hair into a bun. "If Dad saw that." Vanessa rolled her eyes and snorted. "Please, your father couldn't care less about me anymore. And even if he did, what's he going to do? Pout in silence?" Again, they both chuckled, but the laughter slowed, then faded altogether. Heather leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "Where's his car?" Vanessa blinked. The garage was eerily quiet. Where Russell's black Lexus usually sat, there was now just an empty concrete space. No car, no tire marks, no oil stain, just nothing. Vanessa walked to the mudroom. Her purse still on her shoulder, she flipped on the hallway light and opened the door to their master bedroom. She stopped cold. The closet door was wide open, and inside nothing. The hangers that had once held his suits, jackets, and business shirts were bare. The row of neatly folded sweaters? Gone. His shoes? Only a single pair of old tennis sneakers remained, abandoned in the corner. She darted to the bathroom. The counter was clear. No toothbrush, no razor, no cologne, even the bottle of prescription painkillers he used for his back. Gone. "Mom," Heather called from the hallway, her voice uncertain. His office doors open, like really open. Vanessa moved faster now, bare feet slapping against the floor as she stepped into the home office. The bookshelves had gaps like teeth, missing from a smile. His laptop wasn't on the desk. The file cabinet drawers had been emptied. A single sticky note sat dead center on the polished mahogany. "Don't forget to water the plants." No signature, no dramatic goodbye. Vanessa's pulse spiked. "What the hell?" she whispered. Heather appeared beside her. "Mom, he's seriously gone." "Like gone." Vanessa turned on her heel and stormed into the kitchen, yanking open the cabinet above the fridge. The one they both knew he used for storing old mail, tax folders, statements, receipts. She reached inside and pulled out nothing. Just air. She opened the freezer. His favorite bourbon was gone too. Heather stared at her mother. "Did you guys have a fight?" Vanessa didn't answer. Not because she didn't have one, because she didn't know how to. Not yet. Across town, in a sleek suite on the 18th floor of the Halden Grand, Russell sat with his jacket draped across a leather chair, sleeves rolled up, the top button of his shirt undone. The lights were low, the city spread like a glittering grid behind the floor-to-ceiling windows. But Russell wasn't looking at the view. A sleek black folder sat open on the coffee table in front of him, and beside it, his laptop, a portable hard drive, and 3 color-coded binders labeled Vanessa, Garrett, and Financials. Lydia Torres sat opposite him, her dark blazer sharp and unwrinkled, heels crossed at the ankle. She was mid-30s, Latina, whip-smart, and known in legal circles for being absolutely merciless in divorce court. On the other side of Russell sat Frank Dennedy, beefy, 50-ish, and grizzled in the way only former cops could be. He had a half-drunk cup of hotel coffee in front of him and a thick manila envelope filled to bursting beside his elbow. Lydia adjusted her glasses and looked at Russell carefully. "You sure about this, Russ?" Russell didn't answer right away. He stared down at the open folder, at the still shot of Vanessa in a hotel hallway, kissing Garrett Miller, the tennis coach he had hired, paid for, to help Heather win regionals. "I was sure the moment my wife gave our daughter permission to hate me." Lydia leaned back. She didn't press further. Frank reached into the manila envelope and pulled out a stack of surveillance photos, tossing them one by one on the table like a blackjack dealer. Vanessa at a cafe, leaning across the table to touch Garrett's hand. Vanessa at the tennis club, sneaking into the private sauna wing. Vanessa checking into a hotel under her maiden name. Russell didn't flinch at any of them. He'd already seen worse. Frank reached for his iPad next and pulled up a series of screenshots, timestamp log from the Harmon Homes smart security system. "The baby you built turned out to be a real blessing," Frank muttered, tapping the screen. "Not only did it track comings and goings, but we were able to sync it with a backup cloud server that Vanessa didn't know about. This thing recorded everything." Russell nodded slowly. "I designed the prototype to test audio pickup radius. Guess it picked up a little more than I expected." Frank grinned. Then he clicked play on a short audio clip. Vanessa's voice, muffled but distinct, echoed through the suite. Garrett could teach Russell a few things. In bed and out of it. The room fell into a deep, focused silence. Russell closed his eyes for a second, not in shock, but in recognition. He had listened to the clip over and over, not because he needed to hear it, but because he needed to feel what it had done to him. Because revenge, he'd realized, wasn't born from rage. It was born from clarity. He reached for one of the binders and slid it across the table toward Lydia. Inside were printouts of credit card statements spanning the past 14 months, spa trips, hotel suites, lavish dinners, and gifts. All paid for from the joint account. "Vanessa never used her own cards," he murmured. "She wanted me to pay for her affair without knowing it. And I did. I signed every check." Lydia flipped through the pages, face unreadable. "This is a lot of firepower." Frank leaned forward, folding his arms on the table. "And it's only the surface." He pulled out a USB stick, twirling it once before placing it carefully on the table. "I got hotel security cam footage, voice memos, location pings, and even text between her and Garrett, some of which make 50 Shades look like children's literature." Russell didn't smile. He simply sat there, quiet, still, as if a switch inside him had been turned off long ago. Lydia looked from Russell to Frank and back. "We dropped this in court. It's nuclear. No custody for Vanessa. No alimony. You'll get the house, assets, and full parental alienation claim against her for poisoning Heather." Russell tapped the table once. "Do it." And as Lydia started organizing the folders into stacks, Frank slid the USB across the glass surface, one eyebrow raised. Chapter 3. The House Call. The morning light crept through the frosted windows of the Harmon home, soft and deceiving in its warmth. Birds chirped faintly in the garden beyond the kitchen, but inside the house, everything felt cold, unbalanced, as though it knew something was wrong before the people did. Vanessa was in the kitchen, barefoot, hair tied up in a careless bun, robe loosely tied around her waist. She poured herself a cup of coffee with one hand while scrolling through her phone with the other. The blinking notification at the top read, "Joint account, access denied." She frowned, tapped it again. Same message. She muttered under her breath and tried the other joint account. Then the savings. Then Heather's college fund account. All frozen. "What the hell?" she whispered. Before she could dial the bank, the doorbell rang. Vanessa glanced at the wall clock. 8:04 a.m. She padded over to the front door, still balancing her coffee in one hand. When she opened it, the woman standing outside looked like she had walked straight out of a courtroom drama. Immaculate gray suit, hair tight in a twist, folder tucked neatly under her arm. "Mrs. Harmon?" the woman asked smoothly. Vanessa blinked. "Yes." The woman offered a thin smile. "Good morning. By now you've noticed Russell's gone. He also froze all joint accounts." There was no introduction, no apology, just that calm, surgical delivery. Vanessa's first instinct was disbelief. She laughed, a short, incredulous bark. "I'm sorry, who the hell are you?" The woman stepped forward, holding up a slim leather wallet with a business card tucked into the fold. Lydia Torres, attorney at law. Russell retained me months ago. May I come in? Vanessa hesitated. Something in Lydia's eyes told her this wasn't a bluff. But pride made her step aside stiffly without a word. Lydia entered without waiting for approval and made her way to the living room, sitting down neatly on the edge of the couch like a lioness preparing to pounce. Vanessa stood by the archway, arms crossed. Okay, this is insane. Russell's playing what? Victim? Is this because of the vineyard thing? He walked away from that, not me. Lydia opened her folder with clinical precision. He walked away from 17 years of silent disrespect, not just one photo session. Let's not downplay the situation. Vanessa's smirk flickered. Lydia slid a large manila envelope across the coffee table, pausing for a beat. Vanessa snatched it up. As soon as she peeked inside, the blood in her veins went cold. The first document was a formal petition for divorce grounds. Adultery. Clipped behind, it were freeze-framed stills from a video. Hotel hallway. Her and Garrett locked in a very public kiss. Another photo, Garrett's hand on her thigh inside what was clearly a sweet. The timestamp betrayed the lie she'd told Russell about being at a work brunch. Behind that, another sheet. A bank statement with highlighted transactions, plane tickets to Bora Bora, charged to Heather's college fund. And the final document. A legal petition for full custody, citing parental alienation. Vanessa's mouth went dry. What is this? She choked, flipping through the papers in disbelief. He's spying on me? He's using Heather's trust fund now against me. Lydia didn't blink. You made that fund into a romantic getaway. And as for spying, your house security system recorded everything. Your voice included. None of it was accessed illegally. Vanessa's nostrils flared. This is disgusting. Manipulative. I won't let him destroy my life just because he's a bitter little. A sudden thundering of footsteps on the stairs interrupted her. Heather, still in pajama shorts and an oversized hoodie, appeared at the top landing. She'd heard yelling. She'd heard her name. Her eyes were puffy with sleep, but alert. She glanced from her mother to the stranger, then stalked down the stairs like a cat approaching a snake. What's going on? Vanessa straightened, panic edging her voice. Nothing, sweetie, go back upstairs. It's just some legal thing. All made up crap from your father. Lydia stood up and handed Heather the packet. No lies today, she said gently. You should see this for yourself. Vanessa reached to snatch it away, but Heather was quicker. She stepped back and tore open the envelope. Her eyes darted from page to page, confusion melting into disbelief. And then, heartbreak. The photo of her mother and Garrett kissing. The Bora Bora transaction from her account. The custody document with her name in bold. Mom, she whispered, voice trembling. Is this real? Vanessa's mouth opened, closed. Her eyes darted between Lydia and her daughter like a cornered animal. Honey, it's more complicated than. Heather cut her off. This isn't complicated, she snapped, holding up the photos like they were evidence in a murder trial. You lied. You used my money. You let me hate him. You told me he didn't care about me. Vanessa shook her head furiously. No, baby, you don't understand. He was distant. He never don't. Heather's voice cracked. Lydia stepped back quietly, her role here done. Heather was trembling now, shoulders shaking as tears welled in her eyes. The betrayal sat on her chest like a boulder. You made me hate him, she whispered again, softer this time. And he did nothing but love us. Vanessa reached for her, but Heather recoiled. The silence that followed was more brutal than any scream could have been. Chapter 4. Confronting Garrett. The morning air outside the Oak Ridge Golf and Country Club was crisp and quiet, an upper-class kind of silence that only came with manicured greens and generational money. Inside, the restaurant section bustled with light brunch traffic. White tablecloths, mimosa clinks, polite laughter over eggs Benedict, and overpriced truffle fries. Russell sat alone in a private booth tucked into a secluded corner. It wasn't his first time here, but it was the first time he came without any warmth in his chest. No expectation of friendly banter. No pretense. Just resolve. The booth's dark wood frame wrapped around him like a confession box. On the table, One glass of black coffee, untouched, and in the center, a small silver USB drive glinting under the pendant light. At exactly 11:07 a.m., Garrett Miller swaggered in. He was dressed like a man who believed mirrors worshipped him. Aviators tucked into a crisp blue polo, designer watch peeking out from his sleeve, loafers clicking confidently on the tile. He spotted Russell immediately and smirked. "Oh man," he said, sliding into the booth opposite him. "Didn't think you had it in you to call me face to face. No angry voicemails? No legal letters? Just brunch." He chuckled. "What's next? A tearful handshake?" Russell didn't blink. "Sit." "I'm sitting, champ," Garrett said with a wink. "What's on the menu?" "Let me guess, you want me to stop seeing Vanessa?" He grinned wide, waiting for Russell to flinch. Russell's voice was quiet but carried weight. "You stole from the club. $850,000. I've got proof." Garrett's smirk faltered for a half-second, then returned, forced this time. "What the hell are you talking about?" Russell leaned back and slowly slid the USB drive across the table with 2 fingers. It stopped just inches from Garrett's plate. "On that drive is everything. Audio recordings from fundraiser meetings, screenshots of forged checks, bank transfers rerouted through your shell company in Phoenix. I even have security footage of you sneaking into the accounting office after hours. Want to see it?" Garrett stared at the drive like it was a ticking bomb. His confidence drained visibly from his face. A single drop of sweat formed near his temple. "Bullshit," he said, but the edge was gone from his voice. Russell didn't blink. "You embezzled from the very club you used to charm bored housewives. You really thought no one was watching?" He let the silence stretch, savoring the unraveling. Garrett's fingers twitched slightly, hovering over the USB, but he didn't touch it. I don't." Garrett swallowed, throat dry. "Okay, let's say, hypothetically, you're not just bluffing. What do you want?" "Huh? You gonna sue me? Make a scene?" Russell shook his head slowly. "No," Garrett blinked. "No. I want you to disappear," Russell said. "Completely. No goodbyes. No final texts. No vague social media posts about taking time for yourself. You vanish. Change your name. Start over in a town where nobody knows who you are." Garrett scoffed. "You're not serious. If you ever contact Vanessa again," Russell said calmly, "or Heather, or even wave at them through a damn coffee shop window, I'll send this to the police, the club's board of directors, and your mother. Isn't she still the chair of that youth sports foundation?" Garrett's face turned the color of old chalk. "You son of a—" "No," Russell's voice cut clean and final. "You don't get to say anything. You slept with my wife. You poisoned my daughter against me. And you did it while funding your little affair with money you stole from charitable events. You're not a man, Garrett. You're a parasite." Garrett clenched his jaw. "Vanessa won't let me go that easily." Russell raised an eyebrow. "She doesn't know what's on that drive. And you and I both know you've been using her more than loving her." Garrett opened his mouth, closed it. His bravado, once brimming, was now reduced to rubble. He stared down at the USB like it could swallow him whole. "Where would I even go?" he muttered. "I don't care," Russell said, sipping his now-cold coffee. "Alaska. Spain. Hell, dig a hole in the desert and crawl in it. But by midnight tonight, you're gone." Garrett leaned back, hands pressed to his temples. "This is blackmail," he muttered. Russell smiled faintly. "No, this is me giving you a second chance to not go to prison. Blackmail would have been me demanding money, or a public apology. I want you gone. Clean break. No one needs to know where." A long pause settled over the booth. Distant silverware clinked against fine china. Somewhere in the dining area, a group of retirees laughed over mimosas. But in this corner, the temperature had dropped by 10 degrees. Garrett finally stood, pushing himself out of the booth with unsteady hands. He looked at Russell one more time, this time not with arrogance, but with something approaching fear. "This isn't over," he said, but it sounded less like a threat and more like a wish. Russell stood too, meeting him eye to eye. "For you it is." Garrett grabbed the USB, stuffed it into his pocket, and stormed out without another word. His confident strides from earlier now looked like a limp retreat. That night, Garrett fled town. Chapter 5. Collapse of the Queen. Vanessa Anderson stood at the marble kitchen island, staring blankly at her phone screen. Her manicured finger tap call, again and again, straight to voicemail. "Garrett, pick up the damn phone," she hissed under her breath, pacing in tight, agitated circles. "Where the hell are you?" It had been 4 days since he vanished. 4 days of radio silence from the man who once sent flirty good morning selfies and steamy late-night promises. Now, his social media was wiped, his phone disconnected, and the condo she'd once met him in gone. No trace. Just like Russell. The blender of her world had turned on high, and she was the only thing left spinning. Her heart skipped when she saw a notification from her banking app. Relief flickered for a moment until she tapped it open and froze. Insufficient funds. She blinked. Then again. No, this couldn't be right. She tried her second account, then the third. Each account. Empty. No, 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 she whispered, hands shaking as she scrolled through transaction logs. Legal withdrawals. Authorized transfers. He'd done it. Russell had emptied everything she'd squirreled away over the years. The secret savings she used to fund her self-care weekends with Garrett. Gone. And all of it was perfectly legal, because she'd been careless enough to leave Russell on the joint accounts. She'd assumed he was too clueless to notice the shell game she played. Apparently, she'd assumed wrong. "Mom!" Heather's voice came from the staircase. Vanessa turned, startled. Her daughter stood with a half-packed gym bag slung over one shoulder, eyes guarded, lips tight. "Where are you going?" Vanessa asked. Heather shrugged. "Practice. Coach Tina said I could use the extra court time." Vanessa's eyes softened. "Honey, I know things have been tense, but your father, he's doing this to punish me. Not you." Heather didn't reply, just adjusted her bag and turned toward the door. "You're not even going to say goodbye?" Vanessa's voice cracked slightly. Heather paused with her hand on the knob. "You lied to me," she said, not turning around. "You made me believe Dad was worthless, that he was some weak, boring man holding us back. But he was the one doing everything for us. For you." The door shut behind her before Vanessa could form a reply. She stood in the silent house, the only sound her shallow, panicked breathing. Gone was the smug queen who once presided over neighborhood brunches and HOA meetings like royalty. She reached for her wine glass. Empty. She tossed it in the sink, the shatter echoing louder than she'd expected. Hours passed in a haze of pacing, Googling lawyers, texting Garrett, refreshing her bank apps like maybe the zeros would vanish if she wished hard enough. Then came a knock. 3 sharp taps. Vanessa opened the door with a flash of hope, expecting Heather, maybe even Garrett, finally, but instead came the last woman she wanted to see. Lydia Torres. Dark sunglasses, tailored suit, folder in hand. "Well, good morning," Lydia said smoothly, stepping over the threshold without waiting for permission. "By now I assume you've noticed Russell's departure, along with the contents of your financial sandbox." Vanessa's jaw tensed. "You've got some nerve." Lydia held up a hand, businesslike. "This isn't a courtesy call. It's a legal one." She placed the folder on the counter and opened it slowly, like a magician revealing a trick. Out slid several items. Divorce papers. Still frames of security footage. Vanessa and Garrett in a hotel suite, kissing. A list of bank withdrawals and flight bookings to Bora Bora. Then, the final page. A petition for full custody of Heather. Vanessa's face went white. What is this?" "A very thorough and righteous sword to the gut," Lydia said. "Grounds. Adultery, misuse of marital funds, and, most damning, parental alienation. Russell's got timestamps and recordings. Your voice telling Heather to ignore her father, to disrespect him, to replace him. Oh, and there's more." She reached in her briefcase and pulled out a small flash drive. "You didn't know Garrett was recording you?" "He was." Lydia dropped the drive on the counter. "And worse, he shared the recordings with 2 friends. Russell has them now." Vanessa stumbled back like she'd been struck. "You're lying?" "Am I?" Lydia tilted her head. "Then you should listen. Start with the one where you laugh and say, 'If I had known it was this good, I would have dumped Russell years ago.'" Vanessa backed into the wall, shaking her head. "This is illegal. This can't be admissible. It's not for court," Lydia said, voice sharp. "It's for your reputation." Outside the window, Vanessa noticed two neighbors on the sidewalk, talking, looking at her door, whispering. Her stomach dropped. "You've become toxic," Lydia said, almost sympathetically now. Other tennis moms are circulating the screenshots. The HOA had an emergency vote. "You're off the board." Vanessa gripped the counter, her knees threatening to give. "I can fix this," she whispered. I need to talk to Russell. He'll listen. I was angry. He knows how I get. I didn't mean half of it. Do you think he cares what you meant?" Lydia asked quietly. "Do you think he forgot the moment you high-fived your daughter for calling him a loser?" Tears finally brimmed in Vanessa's eyes. She looked small now, deflated. Her lips trembled. "I just want to talk to him." Lydia stared at her for a long moment. Then, softly, "He already gave you everything. Time, love, years of silence. You set the house on fire and handed him the matchbook." With that, she turned and walked out the door. It took Vanessa almost 2 hours to gather the strength to drive across town to the temporary address she dug up from the divorce packet. A corporate-styled suite in a luxury residence tower. She changed her outfit twice, fixed her makeup, rehearsed her lines in the mirror. When she finally knocked on the door, it was Russell himself who answered. He didn't look angry, just tired, calm, detached. She offered a weak smile. "Hi." Russell didn't move, didn't invite her in. I want to talk," she began. "I know things got out of hand. We were both hurting. I was confused, but I never stopped." "You don't get to talk to me anymore," Russell said softly. Vanessa's breath caught. "You high-fived my daughter while calling me worthless," he continued, voice even. "I believed in you. That was my mistake." And he shut the door. Chapter 6. Heather's Choice. The polished floors of the family courthouse reflected the morning sun in sharp glares, and the echo of shoes clacked through the quiet halls like distant drums. Russell sat on a wooden bench outside courtroom 4B, straight-backed, suit-pressed, hands folded. He looked every bit the picture of calm, but his knuckles were white and rigid with pressure. Beside him, Lydia Torres clicked her pen, reviewing the custody binder one more time. "You sure you're ready for this?" she asked quietly, eyes still scanning the page. Russell nodded without hesitation. "Heather needs peace. I won't let her live in that toxicity anymore." At that moment, a voice echoed from the hall entrance. "Russ." He looked up. Vanessa stood there with Heather by her side, though not quite beside her. There was a solid 2-foot distance between mother and daughter, the tension between them as visible as fog. Vanessa wore a conservative navy dress, pearls at her throat, and a strained smile that looked more like a grimace. Heather, meanwhile, wore jeans and a maroon hoodie. Her hair was tied back in a rush ponytail. Her hands were in her pockets, eyes unreadable. She glanced at Russell and gave him a small nod. His heart ached. He nodded back. The bailiff called their case number. Anderson versus Anderson, custody hearing. "Both parties inside, please." Inside the courtroom, the sterile scent of paper, ink, and faint floor polish hung in the air. A single round table was set between 2 chairs on each side. The judge, an older woman with glasses perched on her nose, glanced between the files and the participants. She cleared her throat. "Today we're here for preliminary custody mediation regarding the minor, Heather Anderson. As this is not a full trial, both parties are expected to engage in civil dialogue and compromise. I've reviewed both of your filings." Her eyes lingered on Vanessa's documents for a beat longer. "Mr. Anderson has petitioned for full custody, citing concerns about manipulation, emotional alienation, and unsafe behavioral modeling within the household. Mrs. Anderson disputes those claims and requests shared custody." The judge looked up at the table. "Do you both understand the expectations of this mediation?" "Yes, Your Honor," Russell said clearly. Vanessa nodded softer. "Yes." Heather sat between them. She hadn't touched the bottle of water placed near her. She hadn't even looked at her mother. The judge continued, tapping a pen thoughtfully. "Now, based on the nature of this case, I'm going to strongly recommend joint custody, 50-50, on a rotating bi-weekly schedule. This maintains a relationship with both parents and promotes stability for the child." Vanessa visibly exhaled, relief flickering across her features. Russell, Though his jaw tightened, didn't protest. But then Heather moved. She stood slowly, the scrape of her chair against the floor startling in the silent room. Everyone looked up. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and spoke, clearly, steadily, but with emotion that quivered just beneath the surface. "I want to live with my dad full-time." Vanessa's head snapped toward her. "Heather, I'm not finished," she said, not looking at her mother. She turned toward the judge. "When I turn 18, I want no contact with my mom. None. Not on birthdays. Not on holidays. Not when I graduate. She manipulated me. She made me believe my father didn't care. She said things that made me hate him." The judge held up a hand. "Heather, I need to be sure you understand what you're saying." "This decision," Heather nodded sharply. "I do. I was cruel to the one person who never stopped trying. I was mean. I made fun of his cooking. I ignored his hugs. I told him he was embarrassing when he showed up to my tennis match with a giant sign." She looked at Russell now. Her voice cracked slightly. "And he still showed up. Every time. Even when I made it clear I didn't want him there. He came. Quietly. In the back row. Cheering for me anyway." Russell's throat tightened. Vanessa tried to interject again. "Heather, you don't mean this. You're upset. That's all." Heather finally turned toward her mother, and her face was ice. "You told me he was holding us back. That he didn't deserve us. You told me to roll my eyes at his jokes. That he was weak. I believed you because I loved you." She blinked fast, tears finally breaking through. "But I watched the man you said was pathetic walk out with nothing and still stand tall. He didn't yell. He didn't hit. He didn't even throw your stuff in the street like you joked he would." She swallowed hard. "He left with his dignity. And you try to turn me against him." Vanessa looked like she'd been slapped. Her lip trembled. "I was scared, Heather." "You weren't scared," Heather snapped. "You were selfish." Her voice dropped now. "I used to think Dad was the background noise of our life. But he was the foundation. And you cracked it." The room was so silent. The buzz of the overhead lights was suddenly deafening. Heather turned back toward the judge, who looked more moved than surprised. "I want to live with my dad," she repeated. Vanessa lowered her face into her hands, trying to force tears, to summon some reaction that might reverse the moment. But Heather didn't look at her again. Chapter 7. The new photo. The seasons had changed. Summer had slipped quietly into autumn, and with it came new beginnings and new endings. For Russell, life didn't snap into place overnight, but slowly, like dawn edging over a bruised horizon, the light returned. Gone were the silent dinners, the forced smiles, and the tension thick enough to choke on. In their place were warm morning conversations, mismatched mugs of coffee and cocoa, and a father-daughter bond that was no longer a wound but a work of art, stitched together with truth, pain, and second chances. But for Vanessa, the unraveling had only just begun. Her condo, once a sleek, modern unit in a luxury high-rise paid for largely with Russell's bonuses and back-end contracts, had been foreclosed. The HOA fees had gone unpaid for months, the utilities overdue. Credit card debt mounted like a wave she couldn't swim against. And Garrett, the man she had thrown everything away for, had vanished from her life. Or so she thought. One rainy evening, Russell sat on his couch, a mug of black coffee in hand, as the local news flickered on. Heather was upstairs on a call with her admissions advisor, nervously biting her nails over scholarship interview questions. On screen, the news anchor's voice was clipped and professional. Garrett Miller, former tennis coach and social club fundraiser director, was arrested today in connection with a federal embezzlement case totaling over $850,000. Authorities say an anonymous tip led to the discovery of falsified invoices, siphoned donor funds, and fraudulent tax documents. Miller is expected to face multiple felony charges. Russell didn't blink. He simply reached for his phone, opened a secure folder, and quietly deleted the last digital copy of the audio files he had compiled on Garrett. There was no need to keep them anymore. The chessboard was clear. Across town, Vanessa stood behind the counter of O'Hanley's Bar and Grill near the train station. The bar reeked of old fry oil and spilled whiskey. Her apron was stained, her eyes ringed with fatigue. "Hey, table 3 wants ranch," her manager barked. Vanessa nodded, grabbing the bottle from the cooler and delivering it to a rowdy group of commuters halfway through a picture. One of them recognized her, an old acquaintance from the tennis club, Carla Simmons. Carla blinked. "Vanessa, oh my God." Vanessa froze mid-step. Carla didn't say anything else. She just turned her head and whispered to the woman next to her. Snickers followed. Vanessa could feel the heat rise in her cheeks. Later that night, she took her 10-minute break outside in the alley behind the bar. The wind bit through her thin uniform. She lit a cigarette with trembling fingers, the end flaring in the dark. Her phone buzzed, a new voicemail. It was from Heather. Just a short one. "I got a new Emerson. Full ride. I thought you want to know, I guess." There was no warmth in the voice. No invitation to respond. Just facts. Like an obituary for what used to be. Vanessa didn't cry. She didn't have any tears left. Back at the Anderson home, a quiet two-story in the suburbs, newly painted and freshly landscaped, Heather sat at her desk surrounded by textbooks, her laptop open to a blank Word document. Her scholarship essay was due in less than 48 hours. She stared at the blinking cursor for a long while. Then, slowly, her fingers began to move. "The man I misjudged. Rebuilding trust with my father." She paused, looked at the title, then kept writing. For a long time, I believed a version of my father that wasn't real. I mocked him. I pushed him away. I thought he was weak, boring, small. I didn't see the strength it takes to keep loving someone who's trying to break you. I didn't understand what sacrifice meant until I learned what he gave up and never mentioned to keep our lives together. Her eyes stung as she typed. I judged him through someone else's bitterness. But now, I see the man who sat through my tantrums with patience, who stood in the rain at my matches even when I told him not to come, who quietly packed his things and walked away without destroying a single thing, even though we'd already destroyed so much of him. She stopped, took a shaky breath. My father is the reason I know what resilience looks like, and I hope I get to live in a way that makes up for all the days I didn't say thank you. Weeks passed. The air grew colder. Leaves scattered across sidewalks in copper and crimson waves. One Friday afternoon, Russell stood outside the local photographer studio, a narrow brick building tucked between a florist and a bakery. Heather had insisted on redoing the family portraits for college, she said. For herself. Inside, the photographer greeted him. "Mr. Anderson, right on time." Russell smiled. "Did the prints come in?" "They did, and I think you'll be very happy." She led him to a small table in the back where a pristine leather-bound photo album waited. The photographer opened it. The original picture was there, taken years ago. A stage portrait. Russell in a navy suit, Heather in a little red dress, Vanessa in a matching shade of lipstick. Smiles all around. Except now the image was different. Vanessa had been airbrushed out. Not crudely, not out of malice, but gently, as though she had never belonged in the frame to begin with. The background had been seamlessly blended, the lines clean, the shadows natural. It was just Russell and Heather now, father and daughter, smiling. He stared at the image for a long time. "Is it what you wanted?" the photographer asked quietly. He nodded once. "Yeah." Outside, the bells on the bakery door jingled. Somewhere in the distance, kids were laughing. Heather was waiting in the car, earbuds in, head tilted back against the window, humming something he didn't recognize. Russell slid into the driver's seat and handed her the envelope. She opened it slowly. When she saw the photo, she didn't say anything at first. Her lips pressed together. Then she smiled. "Guess we finally got the perfect picture."